The Fiscal Fortress, where wealth meets wisdom.
Hey, Michelle, it's great to see you. Was looking forward to this session and this topic. Really, really important topic on how to save taxes.
Great to see you, Eric. It's a busy week on my end, but always happy to share some stories about what I've seen at the office and to have our listeners save some money too from the government legally.
Yeah, I mean, who likes to pay taxes? And I think like that's the bane of everybody's existence is paying Uncle Sam money. And today we're going to talk about some concrete ways that you could save potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes, literally, and to do it in a legally compliant way.
Correct. Yes, because we wouldn't suggest anything otherwise. So we definitely believe in doing everything legally. And even within the legal ways, there's definitely every week I see um, ways that I can help my clients save a lot more money on taxes than they're paying in legal fees. Because a lot of times clients don't want to pay the legal fees, but as long as we keep in mind the big picture, how much we're saving, that is really important. So I have 3 examples I was ready to share, with the audience.
That's terrific. Yeah. And these are just for our audience, like these are real life examples. We're changing the names or we're not going to provide any confidential information, but these are real life examples.
The first one is the client comes to me, and one of the beneficiaries, one of the children is inheriting a house from, the parents, and the parents have now both passed away, and this example person is inheriting the house. Now, when they inherit a house and they plan on using it as their home, as their primary residence, then there is a form that absolutely needs to be filled and completed to back to the assessor's office, and there's only 1 year to do it. And if they don't do it in that first year when the parents pass away, there's going to be easily a 5 to 10 fold increase in property taxes.
Wow. So hold on, let me just make sure that I understand this. You're saying that if if one of our parents, as an example, and this is assuming you're in California, if they if we inherit property from our parents, you have to do something. You have to fill out this form from the tax assessor's office, or your property tax could go up 5x or 10x. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. That's right. Because the way that the law is designed right now is that during the lifetime of the person who owns the house, is they can't jump property taxes up to the fair market value. It's very, very limited. And so that's why property taxes are kept from the time of purchase until the time of death at a very low level, because there's only a limit of how much the property taxes can go up by. But of course, that reality is very different than the fair market value of the house. And so when the person passes away is when the assessor wants to bump it up 5 or 10x.
Yeah, I remember this. So I think this law that you're talking about, and it's unique to California, was passed several decades ago. And my understanding is that it was passed to protect retirees. So what they didn't want is like, let's say somebody in San Francisco bought a home and, in the 1960s or 1970s at a very inexpensive price, like maybe $150,000. And then they're pensioners and they're on a fixed income. But then every year their property taxes are based on the market value of their home. Like in San Francisco, that would have been ruinous because real estate's gone up a lot. And so
Right.
the law was passed to basically cap the amount by which the assessor's office could actually increase those retirees' um, property taxes. And it was like, I think it was in the single digits, right? Like it's just a couple of percent or something like that, right?
Correct. It's extremely low. And so the assessors, Bay Area housing has gone up tremendously through the years. And so because the property tax can only be assessed at a very incremental rate, there's a lot of extra property taxes that the assessor wants to collect and is just waiting until the person passes away. And so there's this law that says that if you don't fill out a form within the first year, and it's going from a parent to a child, that property tax will go up 5 to 10 times, right up to the market rate, which is really ruinous.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, that could be definitely hundreds of thousands of dollars given how expensive property taxes are in the Bay Area. And it's really important that you say that because I know that if you know, an elderly person sells their home to a stranger, obviously the stranger, they have to pay the market rate on the property taxes. That makes total sense. But the key thing here is you're saying that if a child inherits the property from a parent, there's an exemption where you can keep the lower assessed value of the property and pay the much lower property tax that your parents would have paid. But if you don't fill out this form within a year, which is not that, I mean, you're grieving, it's not very much time. It seems like it's a total trap for the unwary.
Correct. And so that is why it's so important to just check in with a lawyer. Even though it's the whole initial grieving part, it is a lot going on. You're dealing with a lot of other priorities. People have their life to continue to live, but there are certain deadlines that could save a lot of money because property tax, as you mentioned, it's a lot of money. It's an annual thing, and so if we're talking about paying $100,000 more from the year that the parent died. In 10 years, that's $1 million given to the property tax assessor's office. That could have been that could have been avoided if the form was filled.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Okay, good one. What's another example of a situation where you could save some taxes?
Well, there's when I reviewed trusts from other lawyers and somebody has passed away and then the family comes to me to look at it and say what needs to be done. A lot of times I see things that are vague. And so if you want to, as my advice is if a client comes to me and wants to leave money to a loved one, whether it's a girlfriend, a partner, a, um, a second spouse or subsequent person in their life, a caregiver, it's much better to leave a concrete amount than to leave a vague description of providing for the care and support for that person who was a loved one during for the next lifetime. So in my example, I have a person who died. They have a girlfriend, and he wants to provide for that girlfriend during her lifetime after he's passed. But because it's just care and support, it's really not defined. And so the family has to continue to keep filing tax returns for the dad's estate until that person passes away, which could be 30 plus years from now. And so for 30 additional years, this trustee, which is one of the children, has to continue to pay for expenses for that person's girlfriend.
So it sounds like there's actually two issues here. There's like the fact that you're maintaining this plan for potentially decades more, and that's a pain. But also, like, there's just ambiguity. Like, what does it mean to care for somebody? Is that like the same amount of money, like to maintain the current lifestyle, a better lifestyle, a worse lifestyle? It seems like you're just asking for an argument. And if the girlfriend in your example and the kids have a falling out, I mean, I could easily see litigation here.
Correct. And even like it's a matter of, what type of trips does that mean, right? Or even just groceries. Like do you shop at um Whole Foods? Do you shop at Walmart? I mean, all of that is just care and support too. So it's a very subjective matter. And in the meantime, that child is continuing to operate the trust account and pay taxes on that trust during the person's lifetime. Whereas a way to avoid all this is to create some certainty, saying that, look, I am going to pay for, that person's lifetime of care somewhere between, I don't know, it depends on how much they own overall and how much that person spends, but to give them a more concrete number, right? Whether it's half a million, whether it's over a million, but to at least be able to walk away from that trust and to be able to close it out. And so both people can move on.
So it's better to have like one lump sum payment, is what you're saying, and to be very specific.
That's right. If you want to be able to not have the ongoing obligation of taking care of somebody for their lifetime and filing annual tax returns.
Well, yeah, I think like it's really easy for somebody, to be generous and want to take care of loved ones. But I think like a lot of people don't anticipate like what the burden is on the administrators. And often, as you mentioned, it's the kids. And while you want to take care of somebody for life, you also have to account for the fact that, well, somebody's got to be doing all that paperwork and you're putting a burden on them for potentially decades. And so what you're saying makes a lot of sense. Like just give the person that you care about money one time, and then they can decide what to do with that money.
I agree, just because the whole caring for somebody is very subjective, and even if, relations were good while everybody was alive, a lot of times what I see is that things change when that person who's holding everybody together has passed, and then there's just conflict that comes out.
Totally foreseeable. Yep. Okay. That's a really good piece of advice.
And then the third example that I see often, almost regularly, is where clients come in and it's the parents and they want to gift real estate to their children during their lifetime.
Especially if
And
you're Asian, like that's huge, right? Real estate
exactly.
and gifting real estate, that's a big thing.
I get this question so regularly, and so hopefully by explaining it on a podcast, the client can listen to this before they come in and decide whether to gift it. But it's essentially wanting. There's a gift tax exclusion. That amount changes every year. So this year it's 18,000 to each of your loved ones to bring down your estate. So you have less money when you pass, and then the government can collect, there's an exemption. Then that's also a very a moving target as well. But so we're allowed as US citizens and green card holders to gift money away to a limit. But in addition to that, parents will want to give these real estate gifts that are over $1 million easily to their kids during their lifetime. And the problem with that from a legal perspective is that you're paying a lot more taxes to the government by doing that instead of waiting till the parents pass away.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, parents want to be generous. Maybe they've got an investment property and they want to give that to their kids so that presumably the kids can use it, right? Maybe the kids, the thought process would be, hey, I could give this to my kids so that they don't have to pay as much money for rent or to buy their own home. And so, can you talk in a little bit more detail? So, how would the parents accomplish the goal of making sure their kids could use that property, and also, the other question is, what's the problem with doing that? It sounds like, doing that is not good, but how bad is it? And is it how much more beneficial is it to wait until they pass away before they gift that property?
Well, I have like 3 primary reasons why it's not a good idea. The first one is from a tax perspective. So, by gifting the real estate to the kids during the parents' lifetime, they have, they have lost the right to a step up, and so that means by giving it to the kids, the kids are gonna pay for capital gains tax, going forward, whereas if the parents waited till they passed away, they could have avoided paying hundreds of thousands of dollars of capital gains on that real estate.
Oh, wow. So we should pause right there. That's huge, right? So what you're saying is if you give your kids property today, that's a taxable event. They pay capital gains tax at whatever the prevailing rate is. That could be a ton of money. Could be, hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars. But if they had waited, there's a step up, meaning the value, or they call it basis, but the amount of money that the IRS values the original value of the property, it goes up, which means that you don't pay the tax, right? Is that what that means?
It's almost there in terms of, so when the parent decides to give the money, the real estate to the kids, at that time it's not taxable. So when they transfer, but then if the child ever wants to sell the real estate down the road, they have to pay a lot of capital gains tax that could have been reduced or entirely mitigated if the parents had waited till they passed away. So it's really when the next sale happens, not when the gifting happens, but when the child sells it, there's a lot more gains that could have been significantly reduced if the parents had waited till they passed away to give it to the child.
Right, right. Because that step up is what's known as basis, right? It's stepping up the math. We don't have to go into the math, but the cost. So the potential gain that the IRS is using to calculate the tax, that's a much smaller number.
Correct. And so there's a big tax reason. I would tell my clients to not give the real estate during the lifetime and wait till the parents pass away. The second thing is asset protection. Uh, A lot of times when, kids or parents give the real estate out, everything is fine. But unfortunately, there are very high divorce rates in our country. And so anytime something is gifted out, And if marital problems arise later, that's half of the house is going to be subject to division upon a divorce, or even in terms of just, sometimes parents and children, right? Everything's fine before the parent gives the house. As soon as the house is given to the child, I worry that the client, who are the parents, are going to suddenly need the money, and it's going to be a lot harder for the parents to get that money now that they don't even own it.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. Yeah, I think if memory serves, I mean, the divorce rate, just going back to that topic, it's in excess of 50%. So this is not like a theoretical risk. This is,
Mhm.
you give something during your son or daughter's lifetime, there's, maybe a 50% chance that things will not go as planned.
That's right. That's a really high rate. And then also just why you take on that risk that, by giving something away, you suddenly don't have it. And if you suddenly, as the parents, have a rainy day, you no longer have that money and you have to ask for money, which is a lot worse position to be in. And then the third thing that bothers me when my clients want to gift real estate away to their children during their lifetime is that aside from the tax, aside from the divorce rates and asset protection, there's also a sense of um, it's not fair to the other children that the client has, right? By giving one piece of real estate to one child, and if there's more than one child, then is there a way to equalize that amount to the other children? And that can cause family disharmony.
Right. That makes total sense. So what's the alternative? I mean, obviously, if you wait till the end to gift the property, I could see how that, the math is cleaner because then you'll know what the value of the estate is. It could be more equitable. But what about the situation where you want your kids to be able to use the property? How do they handle that?
Right, if there's only one child in that marriage, then it's easy, just let the child use the real estate, and they'd be very clear who pays property taxes, who pays for repairs, new roof, new windows, all that stuff, and renovations. So that is easier when there's one child, but if there's multiple children, I would recommend having a use agreement, having, something where it's more clear who is going to use it, who's going to carry the insurance over the real estate, and be liable for just things that can go wrong or upgrades that are needed. So a use agreement is would be a very good idea.
All right. And of course, you should talk to an attorney because if you try to do something like this yourself, again, the details are really important. And if you try to do it yourself, the chances of getting it wrong is significantly higher than working with a lawyer.
Correct. So those are just words of, caution of, people who want to nobody wants to pay more taxes. And hopefully, if somebody's interested or has another scenario, feel free to reach out to me, call me, and we can talk about whether or not that's a good idea, because by seeing a lawyer, the lawyer is trained to think a few steps ahead.
Incredible advice. Thanks very much, Rochelle. Yeah, I learned a lot on Session Net. I think a lot of these mistakes, honestly, like I'm a former lawyer, but I'm not sure I would, be thinking this deeply about some of these issues. So it's absolutely critical that people, defer to an expert or get the help rather of an expert.
And at the end of the day, the clients who come in, the parents, it's my job to protect them as much as I can. And so I definitely don't want them paying more taxes, or just to feel like they have given away too much and don't have enough for their sunset years. And so, by having more money in the pocket, then they have more to invest and can listen to your investing tips too. So, which would make me happier that they have more disposable income.
That's absolutely right. Well, thanks again for sharing those stories, Michelle. Super interesting. And I can't wait to hear more on our next episode.
Sounds good. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
You too. Take care, everybody.
The Fiscal Fortress, where wealth meets wisdom.